Dean was the funniest man I knew who wasn't supposed to be funny. And he would be funny doing and saying nothing.
Once he just said, just relax, guys, and told the crew to just relax. And he and I just sat there and talked about nothing. It was just to relax me and get me to the point that he wanted me to be for the scene.
Something shocking just happened. Angie Dickinson is finally speaking up about Dean Martin, years after his tragic demise.
This is after Dean died. You said you went to Dean's funeral and you spoke at Dean's funeral. And after he passed away, you said, "I lost my partner and best friend, the man who made me the man I am today."
And what she had to say was both unexpected and puzzling, leaving many curious and speculative about her revelations. People are asking questions like, why is Angie Dickinson only now talking about the super-talented Dean Martin after all these years? And most importantly, what did she reveal? Join us as we pull back the curtains on this long-awaited revelation. Angie Dickinson, speaking up. In the late 1950s, Angie Dickinson was a name Hollywood couldn't ignore. Her undeniable talent, beauty, and groundbreaking career made her one of the most recognizable stars of her time. She didn't just make waves, she made history. Angie became the first woman to lead a police drama on television, paving the way for future generations. Her career put her alongside some of the biggest names in Hollywood, but few collaborations matched her chemistry with Dean Martin. Now, at 92, Angie is pulling back the curtain to share the highs, lows, and hidden truths of her journey. Keep watching to find out what she said. Looking back, Angie admits that if she could do it all over again, she might not have entered showbiz. She reflected on the immense hard work involved in making movies, explaining that the hours were long, working from 5:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. if she was lucky. The grind was relentless, but Angie's impact on Hollywood was undeniable.
Well, it's not exactly luck that's had Angie Dickinson turning heads. During a film and TV career that's double.
She left her mark in dramas, thrillers, and westerns, joking that she never intentionally did comedies. Her role in Policewoman was a game changer, earning her 3 Emmy nominations. Playing a character who often went undercover, Angie embraced the challenge of becoming someone new with each episode. She described the excitement of portraying different personas, like a hooker or a down-and-outer, and relished the opportunity to work with guest stars like Joan Collins, who she recalled as being incredibly kind. Yet, the demanding schedule wore her down. Angie shared that being a TV star involved constant work, and after doing 90 shows, she wouldn't recommend a TV series to anyone, calling it slave labor. Angie never envisioned herself as an actress. Her entry into entertainment came almost by chance, through a beauty contest that she didn't win, but that led to new opportunities. This path brought her to The Jimmy Durante Show, where she met Frank Sinatra, sparking both a romance and a lifelong friendship.
Last year, Frank was a master of ceremonies for John Wayne's tribute. So last night...
What a big fella.
Yeah, the doll. But Cheryl Ladd told me last night that she got Charlie's Angels off having shown her pilot that we did with her on Policewoman.
She admitted that, although Sinatra had always been her heartthrob, they never needed marriage to make their relationship meaningful. Among all her films, Rio Bravo stands out as Angie's favorite. The classic Western paired her with Dean Martin and John Wayne. She fondly remembered Dean as the easygoing, friendly man who everyone loved, describing him as a cool cat and a darling man. She had known him before, but their bond grew as they worked together. Her time with John Wayne was equally memorable. As she was new to the industry, she recalled how Wayne, a consummate professional, patiently supported her while she worked to get her scenes right. Despite her remarkable accomplishments, Angie acknowledged the toll the industry took on her. The physical demands and long hours weren't easy, and there were moments when she questioned her path. But, reflecting on her career, she knew that despite the mistakes and things she could have done differently, she still managed to stand strong on her own 2 feet. Angie's reflections on her journey reveal the resilience it took to navigate Hollywood's toughest moments. This determination mirrors the early struggles of another Hollywood legend, Dean Martin. From his humble beginnings to overcoming personal challenges, Dean's path to stardom was anything but easy. But just like Angie, he would rise above it all to become the epitome of cool. Dean Martin's early years. Dean Martin was one of a kind. Born into a working-class immigrant family, he rose from humble beginnings to become a singer, comedian, actor, and ultimately, the king of cool.
Lucy, this room isn't big enough to hold all your friends, so we invited your enemies.
His journey, however, was anything but smooth. The king of cool faced bullying, broken bones, and personal tragedies before ascending to stardom. Dean Martin wasn't a stage name until much later. On June 7, 1917, he was born Dino Paul Crocetti in Steubenville, Ohio, to Italian immigrant parents. His father, Gaetano, hailed from Montesilvano, a small commune in Italy, and worked as a barber to support his family. His mother, Angela, likely shared the same southern Italian heritage, though her origins remain more mysterious. The couple instilled strong Italian pride in Dean, who grew up surrounded by the rich traditions of his ancestral homeland. But while family life offered warmth and culture, the outside world was less forgiving. As a young boy, Dean didn't speak a word of English until he turned 5. Italian was his first language, and his accent made him a target for ridicule at school. Enrolled at Grant Elementary, he quickly became the subject of relentless teasing. Classmates mocked his broken English, turning his early school years into a nightmare. Despite these challenges, Dean changed his accent and eventually earned a place among his peers. Still, he never warmed to academics. By the time he reached his teens, Dean decided school wasn't for him. He dropped out in the 10th grade, convinced he was smarter than his teachers and disillusioned by traditional education. Leaving school was a particularly bold move for a teenager in the 1930s. Dean now had to find his path in the world, and it wasn't exactly paved with gold. After leaving school, Dean briefly followed in his father's footsteps, taking a job at a local steel mill. The grueling, tiring labor didn't suit him, and he quickly moved on. However, his next ventures were anything but conventional. During Prohibition, the enterprising teenager dabbled in bootlegging, running illicit liquor for extra cash.
How would you describe Dean Martin? Well, Dean Martin did what he did, and what he did simply was Dean Martin. It's an unmistakable sound, it's an unmistakable style, it's an unmistakable look, and I don't think it can be copied.
This dangerous line of work introduced Dean to the seedy underbelly of Steubenville, exposing him to shady characters and risky situations. By this point, Dean had also developed a knack for defending himself. Years of schoolyard bullying taught him how to throw a punch, a skill that would come in handy in his next pursuit, prize fighting. Dean reinvented himself as Kid Crochet, a prize fighter looking to make a name in the boxing ring. The sport, however, proved unforgiving. Dean suffered a broken nose, a permanently scarred lip, and shattered knuckles, unable to afford proper boxing tape for his hands. Though physically grueling, prize fighting gave Dean a taste of showmanship. But the punishing toll on his body made him realize he needed a new plan. After leaving boxing behind, Dean moved to New York City and shared an apartment with Sonny King, a fellow young Italian with dreams of making it big. The duo was strapped for cash, so they devised an unorthodox plan to pay the rent, hosting bare-knuckle boxing matches in their living room. Charging spectators to watch them brawl, Dean and Sonny turned their apartment into an underground fight club. Each night, they fought until one of them was knocked out, putting on a show for their paying audience. While the venture provided temporary financial relief, Dean soon realized there were easier ways to make a living. Dean's next gig brought him closer to the nightlife he'd come to dominate later in life. He landed a job at a speakeasy casino hidden behind a smoke shop. There, he worked as a croupier, dealing cards and managing roulette tables. The glamorous, smoky atmosphere appealed to Dean's sense of style and introduced him to a new world of entertainment. It wasn't long before he discovered his true calling: singing. Dean began singing in local clubs, starting with covers of popular crooners like Bing Crosby and Perry Como. His velvety voice quickly gained attention, and he joined a band, earning regular paychecks and building a reputation. At this stage, Dean performed under the name Dino Martini, inspired by Italian opera singer Nino Martini. However, anti-Italian sentiment was still rampant in America, and his name became a barrier.
Now I direct my remarks to Dean Martin, who is being honored here tonight for reasons that completely elude me. Actually, no, I'm not being fair to Dean because, no, this is true. In his way, Dean, and I know him very well, has the soul of a poet.
Band leader Sammy Watkins urged him to adopt the simpler, more Americanized name of Dean Martin, a decision that changed the course of his career forever. At 24, Dean married Betty McDonald, his first wife. Together they had 4 children and seemed poised for a happy future. But as Dino Crocetti transformed into Dean Martin, the demands of his rising career began to strain their marriage. The final blow came when Dean met someone who would change his life in more ways than one: Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, and Jerry Lewis. In the mid-1940s, Dean performed at New York's Glass Hat Club, where he shared the bill with a brash young comedian named Jerry Lewis. Though their styles were wildly different, the pair hit it off and decided to collaborate. Their first act debuted in Atlantic City in 1946, and it was a disaster. The crowd hated their routine, and the club owner threatened to fire them unless they improved by their next show. Desperate, Dean and Jerry scrapped their scripted material and decided to wing it. Their improvised performance combined Dean's smooth singing with Jerry's zany slapstick humor. To their surprise, the audience loved it. The duo's success snowballed. They became regulars on the nightclub circuit, performing at prestigious venues like New York's Copacabana. Their act caught the attention of Hollywood, leading to their film debut in My Friend Irma. But even as Martin and Lewis conquered the entertainment world, cracks began to form in their partnership. Ultimately, these cracks became irreparable, leading to them parting ways. On stage, Dean and Jerry were magic. Off stage, their relationship was fraught with tension. Jerry's manic energy often overshadowed Dean's laid-back charm, leaving Dean feeling typecast as the straight man.
This is how a generation remembers Lewis, wacky and over the top, like he was in such classic comedies as The Nutty Professor.
Their differing ambitions and personalities created friction. And by the mid-1950s, the partnership was on the very verge of collapse. Meanwhile, Dean's personal life was also unraveling. His marriage to Betty McDonald ended in 1949, with Dean gaining full custody of their children. Betty, uncomfortable with the spotlight, retreated into a quiet life in San Francisco. Dean wasted no time moving on, marrying Jenna Beeger, a stunning former Orange Bowl queen, just months after his divorce. Jeanne would remain his wife for nearly 25 years, though their marriage also faced its share of challenges. Despite his rocky personal life, Dean's career continued to soar. Martin and Lewis became household names, earning millions and enjoying creative control over their projects. By the late 1950s, however, the strain between Dean and Jerry reached a breaking point. Dean decided to leave the duo and pursue a solo career, a risky move that many predicted would fail. But as history would prove, Dean Martin was just getting started. Dean Martin was a man of immense talent, but even he couldn't avoid the turmoil of fame. As time went on, tensions began to grow, and Dean found himself in Jerry's shadow, with critics praising Jerry Lewis and reducing Martin's role to mere support. Martin's patience wore thin, but nothing made him feel more invisible than a 1954 photo shoot for Look magazine. After posing for a promotional photo for Living It Up, Martin saw the magazine cover and was stunned. He was completely cropped out, leaving only Jerry Lewis. For Martin, that was the point of no return. He was done. But there was still one more thing to handle: their final film together. Hollywood or bust.
Lewis's popularity soared when he teamed up with Dean Martin to become one of the most beloved comedy teams of all time.
On set, the tension was palpable. Martin and Lewis barely spoke off camera, each bitterly pretending everything was fine for the sake of the production. The split between Martin and Lewis was a landmark moment in Hollywood, and fans were desperate to know what went wrong. Years later, Jerry Lewis took full responsibility, acknowledging that his rising stardom had inflated his ego, and his treatment of Martin had soured their relationship. Martin's outbursts, especially the harsh words that cut deep, sealed their fate. As the filming of Hollywood or Bust dragged on, Martin's frustrations bubbled to the surface. His patience had worn thin, and finally, he looked at Lewis and fired the ultimate insult. "To me, you're nothing but a asterisk, 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 ing $sign." The duo completed the film, but their partnership was officially over. By 1956, exactly a decade after their collaboration began, Martin and Lewis went their separate ways. But while Jerry Lewis thought Martin would falter without him, he was sorely mistaken. In Hollywood, Dean Martin wasn't short of friends, and one of his oldest was none other than Frank Sinatra. Martin had known Sinatra since the 1940s, back when he was struggling to make a name for himself. Sinatra had seen the potential in him, and with their split from Lewis, Martin was ready to strike out on his own. He was about to find a new partner in the most unlikely of places. Dean Martin's partnership with Sinatra led him straight into the heart of the infamous Rat Pack. Alongside Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, Martin became a central figure in one of the most charismatic and stylish groups in entertainment history. Their camaraderie, charm, and wit made them legends, and the bustling streets of Las Vegas became their stage. Las Vegas became synonymous with the Rat Pack. Their performances in swanky casinos were spontaneous, exhilarating, and filled with a mischievous energy that the city loved.
Just two great, wonderful people. They were real. You know, a lot of people used to say bad things about him. Oh, he's a drunk, or, you know, he likes to fight and everything. No such thing.
Hotels like the Sands would advertise the Rat Pack with ambiguous listings like Dean Martin, maybe Frank, maybe Sammy, leaving the audience wondering who would take the stage each night. Without the looming presence of Jerry Lewis, Martin found a new level of freedom, and his popularity soared. The 1960s marked a pivotal moment for America, and the Rat Pack wasn't afraid to push boundaries. Despite their polished appearances, Their humor delved into taboo territory. They joked about everything from Martin's drinking to Sinatra's love life, and even addressed serious issues like civil rights, refusing to perform at segregated clubs. Their boldness and willingness to take risks earned them respect and set them apart from their contemporaries. Having conquered the Rat Pack, Dean Martin was ready to step into the spotlight on his own. In 1965, The Dean Martin Show premiered, and Martin took center stage with his own variety show. The 264 episodes were filled with improvisation, wit, and unrestrained fun, often sending him on tangents that made the network nervous. Martin's free-spirited nature shone through, despite attempts by NBC to reel him in. Dean Martin's popularity meant that he had more leverage than ever. When it came time to renegotiate his contract, he secured one of the most bizarre clauses in television history. He didn't have to attend rehearsals. His laid-back style meant that he preferred to improvise, and he negotiated to spend the majority of the week on the golf course, showing up only for taping. His antics, especially his drinking, fueled rumors, but the audiences loved him regardless. Dean Martin's lovable drunk persona was one of his most iconic traits, but it was just that, an act. The man who could often be seen with a drink in hand on stage was actually one of the Rat Pack's closest to a teetotaler. The drink in his glass was often apple juice, and he was typically the first to leave the party to spend time with his family. But the rumors persisted, and Martin played along, keeping up the ruse for the sake of the show.
What are you talking back to me for? Every night you keep adding and adding to your part. You keep putting more you. That's what happened to Jerry.
Martin's ability to portray a drunk on screen was so convincing that it became part of his image, especially in films like Some Came Running and Rio Bravo. Audiences and tabloids started to believe that Martin's on-screen persona was his true self, with some even suggesting he had a real drinking problem. Martin didn't mind the gossip. He let it swirl while he enjoyed his privacy away from the public eye. Despite his public persona, Dean Martin had a number of quirks that surprised those around him. One of his most well-known eccentricities was his fear of elevators. Martin, who suffered from claustrophobia, would always request a room on the first floor when checking into a hotel. He even once walked up 18 flights of stairs rather than take an elevator. This fear, combined with his notorious reputation, only added to his mystique. In 1972, Dean Martin's seemingly invincible career hit a rough patch. His 20-year marriage ended in divorce, and shortly after, the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas canceled his contract, citing his demanding behavior. At 55, Martin found himself in the throes of a midlife crisis. And, as many do in such times, he made some questionable decisions. In the wake of his divorce, Martin wasted no time jumping into another relationship. Less than a year after his first divorce, he married Jean. But his second marriage was even quicker. Less than a month after his first ended, he wed Catherine Hahn, a 26-year-old receptionist. The age gap and whirlwind nature of the marriage made it clear that Martin was looking for a quick rebound rather than a long-lasting commitment. Unfortunately, Martin's second marriage didn't last, and he quickly moved on to propose to beauty queen Gail Renshaw. However, that engagement was called off before it could lead to another marriage. Martin's love life seemed to be a series of poor choices, but just as his personal life was falling apart, he was about to rekindle one of the most iconic relationships in Hollywood history. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis hadn't spoken in private for over 20 years, but Frank Sinatra wasn't about to let their friendship stay in the past. During a muscular dystrophy telethon, Sinatra orchestrated a surprise reunion between the two former partners. As Martin walked on stage, the audience erupted in applause. But not before Lewis muttered, "You son of a asterisk, 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 asterisk," under his breath. The reunion was emotional, but it wasn't a return to their former closeness. Though Jerry Lewis had no idea what was coming, the reunion left him visibly shaken. His shock was evident, and his initial reaction wasn't one of warmth. But as the telethon continued, the duo shared an emotional moment that helped heal their fractured relationship. While they never regained the closeness they once had, they maintained a respectful friendship for the rest of Martin's life. Dean Martin's personal life centered around family. A devoted father of 8, Martin adored his children, especially his first son, Dean Paul Martin. Known as Dino, the young man followed in his father's footsteps, excelling in singing, acting, and even professional tennis. He later became a fighter pilot in the California Air National Guard. Dino was his father's pride and joy, and his tragic end was a devastation Dean couldn't have prepared for. On March 21, 1986, Dino disappeared during a routine training mission over the California desert. His plane vanished from radar in a remote mountainous area. Despite urgent calls and efforts to locate him, Dino's whereabouts remained unknown. The search for the son of one of America's most beloved entertainers intensified, but hope dwindled as the days passed. Martin struggled through the grueling search for his son, unable to escape his despair. Despite high-profile efforts, including a spy plane sent by President Ronald Reagan, no trace of Dino was found. In desperation, Martin sought unconventional help, even hiring 2 psychics. One, upon touching Dino's flight suit, instantly recoiled, declaring him dead. The other, guided by a vision, directed them to San Gorgonio Mountain, the very peak where Sinatra's mother had perished. 3 days after the crash, the wreckage was found, confirming everyone's worst fear. There were no survivors. Martin's grief was all-consuming, and Sinatra, desperate to help, invited him on a massive stadium tour, hoping the distraction would help him heal. But the effort backfired. Martin, who had always preferred intimate club performances, felt suffocated by the enormous crowds. He and Sinatra, once inseparable, now clashed every night. Sinatra thought the excitement of stadium performances and late-night parties could lift Martin's spirits, but instead, it worsened things. Martin, worn out from grief, had no energy for the flashy shows and parties. As the tour continued, tensions between the 2 old friends escalated, and the atmosphere became strained, with Martin growing more distant. Dean Martin's usually smooth stage presence faltered, forgetting lyrics, stumbling through lines, and at one point flicking a lit cigarette into the crowd. His behavior was uncharacteristic and disturbing to fans. His decline was apparent, and the once beloved performer seemed far removed from the man audiences once adored. The tour barely lasted, with Martin withdrawing after a show in New York City. Sinatra's attempts to coax him back into the limelight failed, and Martin retreated to his private jet, heading back to Los Angeles. He was done. The once iconic entertainer had left the tour and his friends behind. The Dean Martin who had once captivated audiences was no more. After the death of his son, he was a shell of his former self. The entertainer, once known for his carefree spirit, had been changed irrevocably by grief. He turned to his remaining family for solace. Though devastated by the loss of Dino, Martin had a large family to support him. As his children grew up, he gained several famous in-laws including Beach Boys' Carl Wilson and actress Olivia Hussey. After retiring from public performances, Martin focused on his family, hoping to find some peace amidst his pain. In 1993, Martin was diagnosed with lung cancer. The doctors advised surgery, but Martin refused the procedure. His family's pleas for him to fight were met with resignation. Martin retired from public life in 1995, spending his last year with his family. On Christmas Day that year, he passed away at the age of 78.
Debonair Dean Martin died today at his home in Beverly Hills, California,
succumbing to respiratory failure. Martin's death in 1995 marked the end of an era for a man who had once ruled the stage with his compelling vocals and comedic timing. Though his life was fraught with personal struggles, his contributions to entertainment remain an enduring part of American pop culture. What do you think about the feud between Martin and Lewis? Do you think it could have been avoided, or do you think otherwise? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.